set two cups on the table every night.
All right, guys, welcome to a little midweek segment of Road to Omaha. It's just me today, unfortunately. Uh, the boys are doing their own thing right now, and you know, gotta support my Wrecking Crew T-shirt. So it's currently Tuesday, April 14th, and as you know, Tuesday means midweeks are going on. I wanted to give my reaction to the top 25. That's mainly what this video is about. And I wrote down the top 25 in some midweeks, although not all of them, as there are a lot of just midweeks that will probably not play too much of a role into the grand scheme of the rankings or anything like that. But out of the top 25 that was released by D1 Baseball as of yesterday it was about 8:45 when it came out in the morning. And I'll just go ahead and get straight into it, all right? Because the top 25 completely, or especially the top 10, it got shifted around a lot. Okay, it's pretty different. Well, sort of. There's a couple teams that did not move down nearly as much as they should have. Other teams got overly punished, and some teams did not get moved at all, despite the fact that they should have. Which I'm going to address that right now. We're going to start from the bottom and go all the way to the top. Number 25, we got Ole Miss. Okay, this is probably the most, I think, controversial part of this entire poll because, and I'm going to do devil's advocate as well for them staying at this spot and a committee's logic for this. But how can you beat a higher ranked opponent because they just swept number 24 LSU, who is a higher ranked opponent than them? How do you sweep a higher ranked opponent and then not move in the top 25? That does not make any logical sense at all. Where do I personally think Ole Miss should be? I think they should be like 22 or 21. Honestly, I think they should be ranked ahead of a team like UCF, who just has been on a cold streak as of late. I'm pretty sure they got swept. Um, Obviously, I'm not going to say like, oh, they should be 20 instead of Florida. No, Florida just beat number 4 Georgia now number 5 Georgia on the road, 2 games to 1 at Georgia, and completely decimated Georgia's pitching staff this past weekend. So no, I'm not saying that they should be in Florida's spot, but they should be further in the top 25 than 25. I mean, give me a break. How do you sweep a ranked conference opponent who is ranked higher than you and then not move anywhere in the top 25? It makes no sense. Ole Miss is a better team than Boston College. They're arguably better than Arizona State. They're hotter right now than Southern Miss. Southern Miss just dropped another series. I'm surprised Southern Miss is still ranked, if you honestly ask me. Southern Miss has been getting belt to ass as of the last couple weeks. I mean, give me a break. But I mean, there I don't think there's any shot they win the Sun Belt now. That's Coastal Carolina's conference. And Coastal Carolina moved up in the top 10. They are back up in the top 10 for the first time since the first month of the season. They are number 7, which is earned. They won their third straight series. They have been hot. And no one in the Sun Belt other than Southern Miss can really compete with them. But even then, that begs the question of, can Southern Miss even compete with Coastal Carolina at this point? I personally don't think so. But anything could happen. Anyways, number 24 is Boston College. They've had a couple of good ranked series wins under their belt. They've been fairly consistent. They haven't um, had any awful losses, so to speak. So I don't disagree with that pick. I don't have too much on Boston College. They're just a solid team. They're fairly well rounded. Number 23 is Arizona State. Arizona State's been floating in between 20 and 25 all year long. So I agree with this. They've especially just because, they haven't been super consistent as of late. They're very hot and cold in conference play. So I do agree with that pick. Arizona State kind of just sitting in kind of the middle of the last 25 at 23 makes sense. If they continue to rack up series wins, especially in conference, then yeah, I could see them moving inside of the top 20. But I don't know, the top 20 stacked. So as of right now, I don't see them moving inside the top 20. But I think them being at 23 is fine, not overly controversial. Southern Miss, they free fell. They fell 11 spots from 11. Um, and for good reason. They just dropped, I think, their second or third consecutive series. They have been insanely cold. Their lineup has been dead the last couple weeks. Their pitching has not been clutch. Um, I have a few different opinions on Southern Miss, but like I said, I'm very quickly um, rattling these off. So Southern Miss at 22 makes sense. If they drop another series, they're going to be unranked. I don't think that's a debate, but moving on. Number 21, UCF. Kind of surprised they're still ranked, especially after them getting swept by Kansas. But at the same time, I understand how poll inertia works. You don't want to just like drop them a bit like 12 spots because I think they were number. I can't remember where they were ranked. They were inside of the top 15 if I'm remembering correctly. But I do understand how poll inertia works. You don't want to drop a team too far down if they were ranked at a certain position, and also you don't want to rise teams too high as well because then that just causes all kinds of ranking imbalances. And I'll get to that an example of that in a second. But UCF at 21 makes sense. If they win another series, they'll be back inside the top 20. But moving on, we got Florida. Florida's offense is ridiculous. They completely decimated Georgia's pitching, and Florida's pitching actually did a fairly decent job at domesticating or taming the Georgia offense. That's probably been arguably the best offense in the country, other than Georgia Tech. I mean, I was shocked that Georgia didn't score double-digit runs at any point in the series. Matter of fact, the first game of the series, Georgia lost 8-2. That was partially because their bullpen got smacked around. I mean, they got decimated. But anyways, Georgia's bullpen was terrible the entire series. Their starting pitching was, eh, I mean, they had a good start from their game two guy. I cannot remember his name, but he's a sinker baller. He was nails. So Georgia, they get their only win of the series in game two, 5-1. But Georgia's bullpen just could not stop Florida's offense. Florida's offense was ridiculous. Eight, obviously they only scored one run, and then they put up 13 runs on Georgia in game three. Although I think in the case of Georgia, they are kind of an offensively carried team. Their pitching has been kind of suspect a lot of the year, but the offense has kind of been able to mask the inconsistencies of especially their bullpen. Um, except for Justin Bird. Justin Bird out of that bullpen for Georgia is nails. The dude can pitch. And then Matt Scott sometimes is fairly decent, but he got hit around a fair amount against Florida. But Florida is also just a team that, when they get hot, they get really hot. And the problem is Florida has not been able to actually have an extended hot streak because they'll go sweep a top five team and then they get swept or lose a stupid midweek. And then they go back and sweep another top 10 team, and it just does not make any sense. Kevin O'Sullivan, though, is known to have his teams get hot right before the postseason begins. So could Florida go on a run in the postseason? Maybe. But like I said, both their offense and their defense need to link up. It's been the case of like, okay, one week their offense is ridiculous, and then the next their pitching is ridiculous. But um, one thing I did notice is Liam Peterson got moved from the Friday spot to the Saturday spot for Florida. He's been struggling a little bit, which it kind of surprised me. Liam Peterson, he's got 80 great stuff. Uh, I've been knowing of him since the 2024 College World Series when he was a freshman. But he's been the Friday guy for Florida for the last 2 years. But this got 80 great stuff. 90, he's got a good four seamer that runs up to 99 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. Great spin on his off speed stuff. His slider, his curveball, his changeup is really good. I love his curveball. It's filthy. It's probably one of the best curveballs in the SEC. But if they can get some good starts from Liam Peterson, then I think Florida will be just fine. Moving to number 19, Oregon. They've been also floating, on the outer bands of the top 20, inside between 21 and 25 the whole year. So reasonable. Oregon's a good team, although they do play in the Big Ten. So they're probably not getting too much of a boost from that since the Big Ten is kind of a weak baseball conference. But moving on to number 18, we got Kansas. Makes sense. They're almost 10 games above 500 in conference play. They just swept a ranked UCF team at home. Um, Kansas has been looking really good. Their pitching staff has impressed me. We'll see if Kansas can maintain the success and move up higher in the rankings. But the Jayhawks looking fairly good. All right, number 17, Mississippi State. Oh boy, I watched that series and one Mississippi State's offense could not hit with runners in scoring position. It was absolutely atrocious. Um, their situational hitting was terrible. Could not hit with runners in scoring position. They couldn't hit with runners on base, period. They just could not move base runners. And if you cannot move base runners, you're not gonna score runs. And if you don't score runs, obviously you're not gonna win. Um, and their pitching was also not great. I will give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. Tennessee does have a really good offense, but I would have thought that Mississippi State's offense would have done something versus Tennessee's anemic pitching staff because their pitching staff, I'm sorry, is terrible. Tennessee has probably a bottom four pitching staff in the conference, but they Mississippi State's offense and their terrible uh, hitting with runners on base made Tennessee look like the 2024 versions of themselves. I mean, it was ridiculous, and that bullpen had like Aaron Combs in it and all kinds of stuff like that, and that freaking long-haired guy with the mustache. That's another spiel for another day. But Mississippi State, yeah, I feel like they got penalized a fair amount because they got swept at home versus an unranked Tennessee team that coming into the series had a 4-8 conference record and had just gotten lost a series to LSU at home, and then they got swept by Vandy the week before. In which included a game where they were up 15-10 and they gave up 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth, then including a walk-off grand slam. That's how bad this Tennessee pitching staff is. Okay, but what do I know? I'm just a college kid that does this for fun. But moving on, number 16, Arkansas. Big series sweep at Alabama versus at the time number 8 ranked Alabama. But oh, look at that! Our co-host Ryan just messaged us. Oh, he's just sending me a picture of a cat. Anyways, um, as I was saying, um, Arkansas, they have a ton of talent. Talent is not an issue for Arkansas. Hasn't been the entire year. It's just can their pitching and their hitting just link up so they can stay hot for a consistent amount of time? Because that hasn't happened yet. They have been bipolar in SEC play because they can get swept by Florida and then sweep Alabama and then get swept by an unranked SEC team. And it's just the consistency for Arkansas is not there. I still think they're going to obviously be a postseason team. They're not hosting a regional. That's not happening. That's no. They are not hosting a regional. At this point, neither is Mississippi State. Mississippi State just went from firmly hosting to being like a 2 seed in a regional. Same thing with Arkansas. They're like a 2 or 3 seed in a regional right now. Um, but anyways, Arkansas, if they can just stay consistent, they'll move back into the top 10 and they'll get back into territory to host a regional. But moving on, number 15, we got West Virginia. They've been consistent most of the year. This is fair. This is a fair pick. They've got good pitching, good offense. Probably the favorites, I would say, to win the Big 12. Um, so there you go, West Virginia. Number 14 is Oklahoma. Ooh, Oklahoma did they just did win a series versus Vandy at Vandy, but don't get it twisted. Oklahoma still has a lot of problems. Um, they were hot to start the year in conference play, and then they played Texas, and their issues got exposed fairly quickly. They got swept by Texas, and the main issue that has been plaguing Oklahoma the entire season, especially when conference play began, their bullpen cannot close games, at least not consistently. They cannot consistently close games. Now, their offense is great. They're one of the better base running teams in the conference and in the country. But, dude, if their bullpen can just figure it out, they can be a dangerous team in a regional. I don't think they're going to get farther than that, but we'll see. Number 13 is Auburn. Auburn finally kind of starting to be consistent after really rough stretch where they lost the series to Texas. Got swept by their rival Alabama in the Iron Bowl, or that's what I'm calling it, the Iron Bowl series, even though the Iron Bowl's football game. Um, yeah, Auburn's been getting whacked. And then, they also had a couple midweek losses here and there. One where they got absolutely railed up the butt by Georgia Tech, and then another one where they got absolutely bent over by Jacksonville State. What? I mean, I understand midweeks are very random and upsets happen all the time in midweeks, but like, what? They lost 15-4. I mean, it was just straight belt. They got bent over and got belt. Bare cheeks. It was bad. Auburn, though, if they can just rattle off a couple more series wins, they'll move back into the top 10, I think. But also, for them to move back into the top 10, there has to be a lot of chaos in the top 10 in the next couple weeks to happen, but we'll see. Number 12, USC. This is a fair ranking for them. They've got one of the better pitching staffs in the country. Their offense is eh. They also play in a conference that has UCLA and Georgia, or UCL, holy cow, UCLA. So, it's and they just got swept by UCLA. To be completely fair to them, UCLA has won 27 games in a row. They've held the number one ranking the entire year for like 8 weeks in a row. So, what can you do about that? Number 11 is Bama. They just got swept by Arkansas. Bama was at home when they got swept. Um, they were at number 8. I feel like they should have fallen a little bit farther, but then at the same time, I understand this was only their second series loss in conference play after a streak of, they had swept Auburn. Trying to remember who else. I think they swept Florida, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, they did. They swept Florida, and then they had won another series, and they play Texas this week at Texas. So if they win against Texas this week, then they're going to be back in the top 10 with no problem. Um, Bama at 11 makes sense. I understand how poll inertia works. Cool. Number 10, my Aggies have entered the top 10 for the first time this season after a sweep of number 2 Texas. The homer in me is coming out a little bit, but you know, obviously our offense continues to rake. Um, don't pitch to Gavin Grahovic or Caden Sorrell or Nico Partita, who's probably the best freshman in the country. Oh my goodness, the freshmen. I mean, Boston Kellner and Nico Partita, they've been hot all season, although Kellner kind of had a cold series, but he'll be all right. Copian was kind of cold. this series though, and Hakopian's our three-hole guy. And I mean, Hakopian's been ridiculous most of the year. Chris Hakopian, one of the top transfers as he came out of Maryland. But the thing that impressed me the most was not the offense because I knew the offense was going to rake. Okay, the thing that impressed me the most is the bullpen was really good this week. The Aggie pitcher of the week has got to go to Gavin Lyons. 4.2 innings pitched, one earned run, and he closed the game. He closed game two versus Texas in long relief of Aiden Sims, who had another really good outing. Um, Shane Sadeo had a bounce back start, I would say. Um, However, still the main issue with Sadeo is he still does give up a ton of base runners. He did not get shelled like he did versus Vandy or Georgia or Missouri. Don't even remind me of the Missouri game. That game should have never been that close. Um, but hey, if Sadeo can keep racking up decent starts, then the starting rotation can stabilize. We can have basically two guaranteed wins every series. Uh, Sims gets moved to the Saturday spot. Should have happened a while ago, but now the Sunday spot is kind of turned into kind of a mix between, well, Moss can start or it can be a bullpen game. Moss, I mean, I understand why he was moved out of the Saturday spot. Obviously, he's been struggling the entire year. He's only had a handful of decent starts, especially in conference play. He's only had like two decent starts I can name right off the top of my head: Oklahoma, and then this versus Vandy recently. Um, it's Moss probably being in more of a hybrid role will probably be better for him. Less pressure allows him to be more loose, um, to perform better if he does a hybrid role of being, coming out of the bullpen or doing a spot start. But um, yeah, the Aggies are hot right now. They just rattled off their third consecutive SEC series win. Um, Now they're almost 5 games above 500 in conference play. They started off conference play 2-4. Since then, they have gone 7-1, and they are now 9-5 and second place in the SEC, if you can believe that. And because they have the tiebreaker over Texas, they're above Texas in the standings. So A&M and Texas are technically, I guess, tied for second place, but A&M currently holds the tiebreaker over Texas, as Texas is also 9-5. And you're probably wondering, well, what the heck? That's only 14 games. That's because Game 3 got canceled. The weather decided to basically give UT and A&M a giant middle finger and say, no, well, you're not playing a Game 3. So that's why it went down to the sweep, because A&M won the first two games. I think A&M probably would have won the third game anyways, honestly. Texas was beaten to hell by the third game. Their bullpen had been ran through. Um, Riojas had probably one of his worst starts against A&M, as he didn't even go five, or that's not true. He went 5 innings, got taken out in the sixth, had 4 earned runs. Was a little bit erratic with his control. Yeah, Ruger Riojas was, but he's still one of the probably top pitchers in the SEC. So I mean, that's just whatever. But I'll tell you why Texas lost the series. It's because they hadn't played in an environment like that before. Most of their big SEC series are at home, and then they go to Bluebell. They had not played in an environment like Bluebell, which is hostile. It's loud, and they got absolutely punished. Their bullpen, oh my gosh, their bullpen walked a ton of guys. Their bullpen was absolutely atrocious this weekend. And their game two starter, I think his name was Luke Harrison, if I'm remembering correctly. 2/3 of an inning, 8 earned runs in game two. He came into that game with like a 2.7 ERA. And oh yeah, 8 earned runs. That's definitely not going to get the job done. So Texas, I would not necessarily say they got exposed, but they got too comfortable. They have not been battle tested like other teams have, and then they go to A&M and they just got their butts kicked. So there you go. A&M moves up 8 spots. They're probably our highest riser of the week as they go from number 18 to number 10. Number 9, we got Virginia. Fair. They've been consistent all year. One of the top teams in the ACC, although the ACC is loaded. Um, so number 8, Florida State just got swept by Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is the number 2 team in the country, but Florida State, bro, 15 runs in the span of 2 innings is not going to cut it. Okay. And you're probably thinking, oh, they scored 15 runs in 2 innings? That's crazy. No, their bullpen gave up 15 runs in the span of 2 innings in game 3 versus Georgia Tech. That game was 3-2, and Georgia Tech ended up winning that game 17-3. Um, you want to talk about a systematic collapse of pitching. There you go. That you got it right there. That's your example. Yikes. So Florida State, kind of surprised they're still in the top 10, but at the same time, the committee probably was like, well, Georgia Tech is, the number 2 team in the country, and it was at Georgia Tech, so they moved down 3 spots from number 5. Number 7, we got Coastal Carolina, easily the best mid-major team in the country. The favorites to win the Sun Belt. They're really good. Their offense is great. Pitching is great. They're probably going to make another deep postseason run this year. I really like Coastal Carolina. Number 6, Oregon State. They're an independent, so the fact that they're this high shows how consistently good Oregon State has been all year long. Their starting rotation in particular has been really good. So Oregon State, they're your number 6 team in the country. Number 5, Georgia. They did just lose a series to a previously unranked Florida team, but that Florida team is also, they probably shouldn't have even been unranked, honestly. That Florida team is a top 10 team talent wise. And like I said, consistency is Florida's biggest issue. Georgia is now facing, I mean, this is their first show of adversity. They were going to lose a series eventually, but now, now they face a little bit of adversity. I think they're going to come out this next weekend and win their next series. They're still first place in the SEC. I mean, they're the only SEC team right now with double-digit wins in conference play. So, um, Georgia they still have one of the best lineups in the country. Number 4 is Texas. This, okay, and this is not just the Aggie and me talking. Okay, if we're talking from an analytical standpoint, um, why did they not drop farther than 2 spots after getting swept by one, a rival, a much lower ranked rival at the time? Now A&M is a top 10 team, but if you ask me, Texas, you know, they'll stay in the top 10. They're not a top 5 team. They're not a top 5 team. They're not battle tested like other SEC teams are. They haven't really played in any hostile environments other than Bluebell. And when they played in Bluebell, they got their asses kicked. So not high on Texas. Jim Schlossnagle made some very questionable managerial decisions during, um, especially game 1 in the first inning. Game 2, he let his starter go and give up 8 earned runs in game 2, and then in game 1, he let his bullpen just walk everyone under the sun. It was, I mean, Texas led that game like 4 times and they still lost. So I don't know. Texas, they are a top 10 team. They're not a top 5 team. I think they should have been like 7 or 8, but what do I know? Number 3 is North Carolina. They just came off of a series win versus Clemson. They continue to dominate the ACC. It's probably going to come down to them and Georgia Tech for the conference as they play each other this upcoming weekend. Georgia Tech and North Carolina. That series will probably decide who wins the ACC, and who is the solidified number 2 team in the country, because whoever loses that series is just probably just going to flip places with each other. Number 2, Georgia Tech. They have the best lineup in the country, most explosive offense. Their pitching has gotten better as the season has gone on. So Georgia Tech, the easy number 2 team in the country. I agree with that pick a lot. So there you go. And then number 1, this is a no-brainer. Everyone saw this coming. UCLA. 27 games, won in a row. They're undefeated in conference play. The only thing I will say is the Big Ten is kind of a bleh conference, but they're very top heavy. But UCLA, I mean, Winning 27 games in a row in college baseball is a very rare feat with how chaotic the game is, um, and how volatile college baseball is. So kudos to UCLA. They're probably going to finish with like less than 5 losses in conference play. They're probably going to run away with the Big Ten. But anyways, that is my um top 25, and I'm just going to give you a quick look ahead of the SEC games series this weekend. A&M goes to LSU to play them in Baton Rouge. I've got A&M winning that game series 2-1. Um, Alabama and Texas. I do have Texas winning that series 2-1, but Bama could flip that series in their favor and win the series on the road, which would put them back in the top 10. Trying to remember who else. I'll do a more full, in-depth breakdown of the series that are coming up. I was just remembering the ones that I pulled right off the top of my dome. Oh yeah, Mizzou at Oklahoma. I've got Oklahoma sweeping that series. Mizzou's the worst team in the conference and one of the worst teams in college baseball. So there's that. But let me share my screen real quick and we will look at the series. So here we go. Okay. So SEC baseball series. So not SEC Network baseball. All right, here we go. Schedule. Oh, good gracious. Oh my gosh. There we go. So, these are all the midweeks. Okay, first series is Auburn at Florida. I got Florida winning that series 2-1. Florida's a pretty hostile environment. And Florida's hot right now. Georgia at Arkansas. I got Georgia winning that series 2-1. Vandy, Kentucky. I've got Vandy winning that series, honestly, unless their pitching decides to be atrocious again for the bajillionth week in a row. Ole Miss at Tennessee. That one's a toss up, but honestly, I'm gonna say Tennessee takes this series 2-1. Mississippi State at South Carolina. Mississippi State wins that series. I got them in a sweep. Missouri obviously sweeping Oklahoma. Or Oklahoma sweeping Missouri. Oops. This one's kind of a toss up series. A&M I got winning 2-1 over LSU. So that is the SEC outlook this week. Yeah, that's what I've got going on. And let me quit sharing my screen real quick. But I appreciate every one of y'all for tuning into this. This is just a quick little midweek video that I just made, and yeah, go watch the midweeks, and we will see y'all on Sunday when we film Road to Omaha Week 5.
I still set 2 cups on the table every night.